The world holding its breath tonight as Russia attacks Ukraine. From here at home to the war zone overseas, we have complete coverage of this breaking news story.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Alan Carter.
And I'm Tracy Tong. We start tonight more than 7,500 kilometers from Toronto. This is a live look at Ukraine's capital, Kyiv.
It is a city under the threat of attack. Overnight, Russian troops invaded the Eastern European country. Thousands are trying to flee. The number of those killed stands at over 50. Scores of civilians have been injured. Western leaders, including our Prime Minister, are condemning the invasion.
And we are going to hear from the Prime Minister and U.S. President in a few moments. Now, Canada has the third largest Ukrainian population in the world, only behind Ukraine itself and Russia. And here at home, Ukrainian Canadians are filled with dread and anxiety, worried about their loved ones back in their homeland. Our Catherine McDonald joins us live from Nathan Phillips Square, where a rally of support is underway at this hour. Catherine, how is that community holding up?
Well, this has been a very difficult day for this community. As you said, Canada is home to more than 1.3 million people of Ukrainian descent, and many of those people call the GTA home. Now look over my shoulder, as you can see, a massive rally here. Hundreds have gathered to protest against Vladimir Putin. The rally is actually organized by those in the Russian community who are against their government's actions and are here to show their support for the people of Ukraine. You can see signs that say, "God bless Ukraine," "Stop Russian aggression," "Stand with Ukraine." And people are wearing Ukrainian flags, and some are even wearing Russian flags. Now, I spent the day speaking to Ukrainian Canadians who are worried sick about their loved ones. Many tell me they were up all night watching the news and trying to connect with family back home. One woman who came to Canada as a refugee from the Ukraine in 2016 says she got a text from her sister around 3:45 this morning. They sent her terrifying videos showing planes overhead and sirens. She says her sister and her family won't leave, and she's praying for a ceasefire, but fearful for what's next.
It was 3:45. They sent me message that they're under attack. They sent me message that the war starts above their home.
Right above their home. And then they sent you this video.
Yes.
And when you saw that, what did you say to them?
I was shocked. Of course, I didn't believe it, and I don't understand what's going on.
I don't think that anyone in their heart of hearts believed that Putin would have the audacity to do what he did. And that calls for a strong reaction from the international community.
So how can you help? The Ukrainian Canadian Congress is planning another rally tomorrow at the Ukrainian consulate on the lakeshore, and they're having a mega walk on Sunday. And I heard this organization say that they're planning to be back here on Monday. There's also an online website for humanitarian aid if you want to donate at www.cufoundation.ca. Their goal is to raise $2.5 million to send back to Ukraine for all these people who are, many of them, homeless and now trying to find shelter. And this crowd is passionate, but there is a sense of solidarity here, which is really nice to see on such a difficult day for so many Torontonians and Canadians. Back to you.
Thank you, Catherine. And leaders around the world are speaking out tonight against Russia. The Prime Minister talking with the President of Ukraine to express solidarity with the people of that country. Canada is imposing severe sanctions against Russia. And for those under siege tonight in Ukraine, Trudeau said this.
In these dark hours, Canada's message to the people of Ukraine is this: you are not alone. We are standing with you. To Canadians and permanent residents in Ukraine, your safety and security are now our top priority. We also want to make sure that you can get to safety.
President Joe Biden is sending U.S. troops to Europe tonight to defend NATO allies and is issuing a new round of sanctions he believes will cripple Russia. So let's bring in our Reggie Cecchini, who is in Washington for us. Reggie, right now it seems the plan is to fight Putin with sanctions and not boots on the ground in Ukraine. How effective will these sanctions be?
Well, Tracy, good evening. Look, there is going to be no boots on the ground from the Biden administration and from America in Ukraine. The White House has been working to reassure Americans of this for weeks, mainly because Ukraine is not a member of the NATO alliance. Now, the U.S. is providing logistical and financial support to be able to prop up both the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian military, but that's where it stops. There is no broad appetite here amongst the broader American public for any kind of involvement with the United States in a conflict between two other countries. Now, as you said, there are economic sanctions that are being levied on Russia, on the Kremlin, and on people surrounding Vladimir Putin in order to kind of stymie and take away that ability to use their finances and provide a bit of economic pressure here. But as we heard from President Biden earlier today, these are not going to be an immediate action, and they may simply not stop President Putin from moving any further.
I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions and new limitations on what can be exported to Russia. This is going to impose severe cost on the Russian economy, both immediately and over time. We have purposely designed these sanctions to maximize the long-term impact on Russia.
All right, so Reggie, we know the U.S. is committing to bolster the defense position across Eastern Europe. Where will forces be deployed, and what's the possibility of Putin going beyond Ukraine?
Well, look, so as we said, forces are not going to be deployed in Ukraine, but they will be bolstering the NATO kind of line that runs up towards the Russian border and surrounding Ukraine. This is part of an obligation that the United States has, along with other NATO allies, in order to have a defense on the ready. And as we heard, President Biden will be moving more and redeploying some of the troops that are already situated and stationed throughout parts of Europe. What happens if President Putin opts to move outside of Ukraine? That would become a red line for NATO. It would trigger Article 5, and it would create a much more global conflict outside of just these two nations. This is something that Western leaders have been fearful of. This is something that Russian President Vladimir Putin has been echoing that he may want to carry out. He is simply not somebody who wants to see NATO encroaching any further on Russian territory. He does not want to see Ukraine becoming a part of NATO or even joining the European Union. And this is really setting up a clash right now between the Kremlin and between the West. This is going to be something that's talked about tomorrow during a virtual summit of the G7 leaders following a phone call with President Biden earlier today. There will also be a meeting of the European Union tomorrow in Brussels. The West really trying to put up a front here to push back on what has been a nonstop barrage across Ukraine over the last 18 to 19 hours.
Yeah, we'll certainly follow very closely how world leaders continue to respond to this. Thanks so much for that, Reggie.
Thanks.
At Queen's Park, a rare show of solidarity as all parties denounce the Russian invasion. Matthew Bingley is live at Queen's Park with more. Matt.
Alan, it was quite the show of support this morning ahead of Queen's question period, when one by one, each of the party leaders stood and put aside their partisan differences to show solidarity for Ukraine. Now, beginning with Premier Doug Ford, there were tributes about the unique bond held between both countries and a nod to how Ukrainian Canadians have helped shape this country, but also strong condemnations of the Russian Federation attack. One of the biggest responses coming from the Green Party's Mike Schreiner as he delivered a passionate speech about this building's dedication to upholding democracy. Have a listen.
Canada shall never waver in standing against tyranny. Canada shall never waver in the support of Ukraine. As Putin's aggression lights up the skies of Kiev, they will see the strength of the Ukrainian people emerge from the darkness. We must ensure that the Ukrainian flag flies high above the skyline. The blue and yellow must be the last colors the invaders see.
In this House, in this province, we stand united for democracy. Democracy must always trump authoritarianism.
Now, Matt, there are calls for Canada and even Ontario to do its part, but what could that possibly include?
Well, the opposition leader was pressuring the Ford government to really show support to Prime Minister Trudeau and really show Ontario is committed to helping out with this. Everything from refugees, welcoming them, as well as helping out with family reunification efforts. Now, earlier, the Labour Minister, Monty McNaughton, said that he had a conversation with the Federal Minister of Immigration and did, in fact, show all of that support, including perhaps an expedited process to move Ukrainians here to the province. Alan.
Thank you, Matt.
And as news breaks on the Ukraine crisis, we've got you covered at globalnews.ca and on our streaming service on the Global TV app and Amazon Prime Video.
Okay, let's check in with our meteorologist, Anthony Farnell. Now.
Anthony, we are tracking some snow for the morning commute.
That's right. And right around 7, 8 a.m. is when we're expecting most of the snowfall. Not good news if you're trying to take your kids to school, trying to get to work yourself. Just give yourself some extra time. I know it's late February. We're all fed up with the snow, but we're also used to driving in it. So give yourself some time tomorrow. Right now and throughout the day today, we've had an abundance of sunshine. It didn't do too much to the temperature, 6 degrees below freezing. That was the best we could do. That's our current temperature. And those winds just now starting to tick up from the east-northeast, and there's going to be some enhancement. Notice how Lake Ontario, even the inner harbor, free of ice at this hour. So with all that open water and the cold temperatures, we're going to get some lake effect snow at the onset around 10 p.m., somewhere around Hamilton, Burlington, and then eventually oscillating up towards the downtown core. But there is just a widespread 5 to 10 centimeter snowfall, and this weather advisory in pink. There's a bit more snow expected around Kingston to Brockville, Cornwall, and even into southwestern Quebec. This is where a snowfall warning is currently in place. So when does it all start? As I mentioned, the first band around Hamilton, 10 p.m. For Toronto, it's around 1 or 2 in the morning, but it's going to wrap up rather quickly as well. So this is quite a bit of snow. It's going to definitely mess with the roads because it's so cold and it's breezy. It'll be blowing around. But this system is a fast mover, so it's in and out of here before noon. So your trip home will be a lot easier on Friday afternoon. It's still quite cold up towards the Nickel Belt, Sudbury, North Bay, -14, -13, -10 in Ottawa. And here's how it looks. Our futurecast through the night tonight. We see that initial band. There it is. This is at 11 p.m., and then that moves into the city of Toronto. Here's a look at what we're expecting as we move through the night and into the day tomorrow. 7 to 12 centimeters, locally a little bit more, but it wraps up around 10 a.m. We'll talk about the more important weekend forecast. I think we can all use a weekend. That's coming up in just a bit. Tracy?
You can say that again. Thanks, Anthony.
A man is in serious condition following an early morning stabbing in Leslieville. Toronto police say they were called to this home on Gerrard Street East and Highfield Road around 5:30. A man in his 50s reportedly stabbed. He was rushed to a trauma center in serious condition. So far, no arrests.
Police have identified the young woman who was killed in a hit and run in Mississauga over the weekend. 24-year-old Kavita Chaudhry of Brampton was walking along Derry Road and was crossing at Catterick near Airport Road on Sunday when she was struck. She later died in hospital. The suspect car, a dark-colored vehicle, fled the scene. Police say they have since found the vehicle and identified the driver. They are encouraging the driver to seek legal counsel and turn themselves in.
A driver in life-threatening condition after a collision between 2 trucks on Highway 401 in North York. This happened on the eastbound express lanes of the 401 before Leslie. Around 10 o'clock this morning, the condition of the other driver unknown. The cause of the collision also unknown.
Let's get to Ontario's latest COVID-19 numbers now. Just under 1,100 patients required care in a hospital, down by 40 in the past day. The ICU number was unchanged at 302. 41 more fatalities are being blamed on the virus as the pandemic death toll now tops 12,347.
The first Canadian-developed COVID-19 vaccine has now been approved for use by Health Canada. Quebec-based Medicago created the plant-based vaccine that offers more than 70% protection against variants, including Delta, in a large-scale study. Now, that was before Omicron began to circulate. The shot will be called Covifense, which is a play on defense against COVID.
This is the first authorized COVID-19 vaccine developed by a Canadian company. After an in-depth review of the evidence, we've determined that this vaccine meets the department's stringent safety, efficacy, and quality requirements.
No serious adverse reactions were reported during the trials, which was in more than 12,000 participants. It is the sixth shot against COVID-19 approved for use in this country. Straight ahead, Ukraine under attack. People around the world condemning Russia's military action, including protesters here at home. More on that part of the story after the break.
I'm Sean O'Shea, live at Martin Grove and Bloor. Pothole season is here, earlier than usual, and some mechanics say the damage is worse than ever. That story's ahead.
New at 6, Ukraine under attack. After weeks of threats, Russia unleashes its military might.
And that calls for a strong reaction from the international community.
The world reacting tonight, while those in Ukraine are forced to confront a deadly new reality.
The bomb went off, windows rattled, and I knew it was a bomb instantly.
Special coverage of Ukraine under attack begins right now.
We begin with breaking news tonight and the Russian attack on Ukraine.
The eyes of the world squarely focused on that conflict. Everyone waiting, watching, wondering what will happen in the hours and days to come.
This is a live shot of the capital, Kyiv. There are nearly 3 million people in the city. Sleep won't come easy for them tonight, or for the rest of the 40 million people who call Ukraine home. We have a lot to cover tonight, from the war zone itself to reaction right here at home.
Now, Canada is home to more than 1 million people of Ukrainian descent, and they are worried sick for family and friends forced to flee or caught in the line of Russian fire.
Catherine McDonald has been talking with members of Toronto's Ukrainian community today. Catherine.
Well, Ukrainian Canadians I've been speaking with tell me that they are shocked by the invasion on Ukraine, but they are not surprised. Look over my shoulder here. We're at Nathan Phillips Square, and you can see a massive rally which was planned at the last minute today by Russian Canadians who say they stand in solidarity with their Ukrainian neighbors in their condemnation of Vladimir Putin. Toronto is home to thousands of Ukrainian Canadians, many who are functioning on little sleep after a restless night.
I not wake up this morning. I just follow all this all night when it starts.
Alex Chaplajan and Larissa Senyorkina do not know one another, but both have sisters in Ukraine.
They sent me a message that they're under attack.
They're worried about the safety of their loved ones after the Russians invaded Ukraine overnight.
Everybody predicted, but nobody believed it can be crazy like this.
Hear sirens and they hear bombing because they live near the airport, military airport.
Senyorkina, a refugee herself, was woken up with a text at 3:45 a.m. and sent these videos taken from just outside her sister's house. Her sister has 2 children. She says they refuse to leave.
My family told me that we are not running because this is our home.
Boris Rezhnewski, who chairs the Human Rights Commission for the Ukrainian World Congress, is devastated by what's going on.
Many with children are sending their children and wives out.
Rezhnewski says sanctions against Russia must be stiff.
We know that terrible horror is about to begin. Has begun.
And you have family there.
Yes.
We have supported the community through rallies, which we have held for the past 2 weekends. We're planning another rally tomorrow, likely in City Hall Square, and of course across the country.
Canadians can show their support by donating to a fundraiser for humanitarian aid on the Canadian Ukrainian Foundation website.
It's terrible, and nobody knows what next.
And just a massive scene here at this protest at Nathan Phillips Square. Speakers have been going since 5 o'clock. We heard Mayor John Tory just 15 minutes ago. The anthem was sung. It really is a very supportive community here of Russian Canadians, Ukrainian Canadians, and just people who want to show their support for this community that is really undergoing something that they never thought would happen. They prayed it wouldn't happen, and it has. Now, there is another rally planned by the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. That's tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the consulate on Lakeshore, and then there's a mega march planned on Sunday at 2 o'clock. And listening to the organizers of this event, it's a safe bet that there are going to be protests every day because people feel a strength coming together and being together at this very difficult time. We'll throw it back to you.
Thank you, Catherine. Now, despite warnings from the Canadian government to leave, many Canadians remain in Ukraine. As of Wednesday, Global Affairs says about 800 people are still registered as being in the country. All this as Ukrainian airspace has been shut down to civilian aircraft. Our Shalima Maharaj has been speaking to Canadians there.
I woke up this morning at about 4:45. I'm still a little bit jet lagged. And then about 15 minutes later, suddenly a bomb goes off.
Miron Cymbaluk arrived in Ukraine from Canada a couple of days ago. By that point, there were already strong rumblings of imminent action by Russia.
I know what that sounds like because I lived through that in Afghanistan. Quite often, you'd wake up to a bomb explosion, then the windows rattled.
Cymbaluk is staying near an airport near Kyiv. He's here on a business trip helping to grow the country's agriculture industry.
And I thought to myself, oh God, here it starts. And so then I turned on the television. I then called my friends. And sure enough, the news was coming out already.
Hanna Hopko is a former Ukrainian member of parliament and democracy activist.
This is violation of international law. And Russia should be withdrawn from the UN Security Council. They should be isolated from all international organizations.
With these latest developments, Miron Cymbaluk will now stay on longer than he anticipated.
But on the other hand, I used to work for the United Nations, and I've been talking to some of my old colleagues, and it looks like I might be volunteering tomorrow for some supply chains and for some humanitarian goods that need to be brought in.
Global Affairs Canada, meanwhile, has since updated its advisory to Canadians still on the ground in Ukraine to shelter in a secure place unless it is safe to leave the country. Shalima Maharaj, Global News.
And Canada has imposed severe new sanctions on Russia after President Vladimir Putin launched a large-scale military attack on Ukraine.
These sanctions will target 58 individuals and entities. We will also sanction members of the Russian Security Council, including the Defense Minister, the Finance Minister, and the Justice Minister. In addition, effective immediately, we are ceasing all export permits for Russia and canceling existing permits.
The sanctions will target Russian oligarchs and their families, the paramilitary organization Wagner Group, and major Russian banks. The Prime Minister called the invasion of Ukraine a horrific, unprovoked attack that has put the lives of innocent people at risk. Trudeau says Canada is working closely with NATO and other allies to coordinate their response to the invasion.
There's been an impact in the financial markets as well. North American stock markets following a global sell-off trend. And Gaviola has more on what you need to know about the market reaction to Russia's invasion. Anne.
What happened today, Alan, sent financial shockwaves all around the world. And if this escalates, if this drags on, it has the potential to continue to impact every single Canadian household.
The Russian stock market saw its value halved as investors calculated the toll of tightening sanctions on Russian companies. The biggest one-day tumble for the ruble, forcing Russia's central bank to step in. Stock markets from Asia to North America were in the red as investors were spooked by fears about what could happen next and how that could take a bite out of corporate profits. Oil prices were the standout, spiking past $100 a barrel for the first time in 8 years.
With this type of move in oil prices, gasoline prices are going to move higher as well, and there is going to be some shock at the pump.
And that's just the start.
We have to think about transportation and how fuel costs are going to be impacting transportation. We do have a trucking economy in North America.
Higher energy costs mean higher transportation costs, so expect inflation to surge as almost everything is trucked or shipped in. At least one Bay Street economist expects inflation to be around 6% in March. That will influence the Bank of Canada's upcoming decision on interest rates.
you can't rule anything out. But at this point, if it's status quo for the next 7 days or so, a 25 basis point rate hike is almost certainly in the cards.
Ukraine is Europe's breadbasket, a major producer of corn and wheat, which sent prices of both commodities higher. And there'll be fallout for Canadian farmers as well, facing long wait times for equipment and higher costs of production because key chemicals come from Ukraine.
As a result of this conflict, bringing more uncertainty, we're going to see probably fertilizer prices go up as well.
Further exacerbating supply chain snarls means higher prices for consumer goods. But market analysts say it's not the time to sell in a panic or make major changes to your investment strategy.
Russia's attack on Ukraine is even putting greater pressure on already surging oil prices. So what's going to happen, Ann, to the cost of filling up?
Right, Alan. So maybe you don't change your investment strategy, but after hearing this, you might want to change your driving strategy if at all possible. Spoiler alert, maybe go and fill up. So according to gas price analyst Dan McTeague, this is going to be a 1-2 punch in terms of what people across the GTA can expect. So if things don't get better over the next few days, you're going to see that impact into the weekend. So prices at the pumps going up, let's call it 7 to 8 cents a liter, bringing the average for the region to $1.67 per liter. So that's for this weekend, part one. If things continue to escalate over the next few weeks, McTeague estimates, he's crunched the numbers, and he's saying it is possible that by next month, we could see prices at the pumps pushing past $2 a liter.
Yikes. Thanks, Ann.
Well, to news out of Queen's Park now. If you ever feel like your employer is watching you, the province is introducing legislation to make sure any electronic surveillance is fully disclosed. But as Matthew Bingley tells us, there are concerns about how effective it will be.
As thousands of people remain out of the office, privacy, which used to be a luxury, now relies on a lot of trust.
If I want to have a private conversation with someone, I could go to their desk or to their cubicle or their office or whatever. But we don't have that same luxury, obviously, when we're working from home.
Justin Regubar has found a good balance of working from home with his employer, but knowing how closely his bosses are looking at his work or possibly at his emails would add a little peace of mind.
Even though they are corporate emails, I would like to know that they're being tracked.
The Ministry of Labor says it will soon require employers to disclose how much they're monitoring and what they do with the data they collect. Everything from tracking GPS units in company vehicles to watching how staff use electronic devices.
Data is power.
Labor Minister Monty McNaughton says by making employers disclose what they're tracking, workers can decide who they're comfortable working for.
We'll be enshrining this in law. It will be in the Employment Standards Act. Any employer with 25 or more employees will have to have a policy in place and will be enforced through the Ministry of Labor inspectors.
But it's unclear what measures will be put in place in cases of possible overreach.
I'd be curious to know if there are any actual real teeth in the legislation.
Labor lawyer Alex Lucifero says he still needs to see if there are any rules to enforce the right to privacy.
Otherwise, the government is simply mandating employers to introduce a policy without the nuts and bolts of what those policies should say.
Now, much like the For Government's right to disconnect law for workers, that employment lawyer says this appears to be another piece of legislation with good intentions, but likely not enough enforcement to back it up. Tracy.
Matt, thank you. That's our Matthew Bingley live at Queen's Park.
Peel Regional Police say a 49-year-old teacher at a Brampton high school is facing sexual assault charges. And our Morgan Campbell joins us from Brampton with the latest on this. Morgan.
Well, Alan, Global News has learned that the teacher was a tech teacher here at Chinguacousy Secondary School in Brampton. Earlier this month, multiple victims came forward with allegations of sexual assault, and Peel Regional Police launched an investigation into the matter. What they know so far is that the assaults they believe happened between November of 2019 and October of 2020. So far, 2 victims have come forward. Police say there could be more. 49-year-old Bentley Rattray, pictured here and who is from Hamilton, is facing 2 counts each of sexual assault and sexual interference. A photo of Rattray is posted on the website of Really Living Center. It's a church in Hamilton who lists the man as a pastor. Now, Global News did reach out to the church for comment, but has not yet heard back. Police say that the investigation continues and that they would like to speak to anyone who may have information.
We want any member of our community who believes they may have been a victim of a crime to speak to investigators so that we can, in fact, investigate these incidents. And if appropriate and charges are warranted, we want to lay those charges should they be required.
Global News also reached out to the Peel District School Board, and they provided no comment. They also would not say whether or not any supports were brought in to help any students grappling with this information that's coming to light today. Alan, the board said that they were not willing to comment on a, quote, human resources matter. However, it really does leave us to wonder what types of services are being brought in for students. We had an opportunity to speak to a couple who didn't want to go on camera, and they said that the news is extremely concerning. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Morgan.
Time is running out for a popular and tasty Toronto tradition, Randy's Patties. Unless, of course, a certain superstar steps up to save it. We'll explain coming up.
And we've already had more snow this winter than all of last winter, and we are going to add to those totals. There is a travel advisory in effect for most of southern Ontario. When it will begin and how long it will last ahead.
I'm Richard Martin inside of the Global News Chopper. We're looking at Queen's Park at College. Police are still being precautious, and they are limiting access getting into Queen's Park. Unlock savings on car insurance with CAA MyPace. Cut costs if you drive less than 12,000 kilometers per year. Visit CAAMyPace.com to learn more.